Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to be reviewing the Lenovo IdeaPad Duet Chromebook, which is a bit of a mouthful. But if you saw my early impressions and unboxing, you'll have seen that I really was blown away by the build quality of this thing as soon as I got it out of the box, especially for a budget device. So let's dive in and, see how well it's performed in my actual review. Okay, so the specs include a MediaTek CPU and it's a P60T octa-core 2 GHz. The display is 10-inch and it's 1920 by 1200 and it's an IPS panel, and obviously it ships with Chrome OS, which is really nice considering it's the first time that I've actually used it, so it was really interesting being able to play with that. So let's kick it off with what I liked, and the first thing that I loved about this device is just how good this build quality is. It's almost the right size for what I would want from something like this, although I just wish it was that tiny bit bigger, because when it comes to productivity it can get a bit cramped. But at £279, which I paid for this, the device is absolutely stunning. On its own, the build quality feels like it'd be worth that without the included accessories that come with it. The metal finish is beautiful, and I love this two-tone sort of fade effect that they've got there. You've got to see that slate blue at the top and then the grey down the bottom, and the camera bump doesn't stick out all that much. One of the other beautiful things about this is the screen quality. It is pretty superb considering, again, the price point on this. It looks sharp, the brightness is really good as well, and one thing that's really impressive is the viewing angles. Now, a lot of the time when you start going into sort of budget devices or anything like that, unless you're looking, spot on or anything, it becomes quite a bit of a washed out mess. But this keeps the colours accurate, even if you're looking at it from an angle. And you know what, despite the screen being a little bit too small for something that I would use in my daily driver, this screen is really impressive. The quality of it is just superb, and there's no way that you beat this screen at this price point. Absolutely not. This is probably the best screen I've seen in the budget market for a very long time. So build quality aside, you also get, obviously, the keyboard with the trackpad included in the box, which just snaps on some of the time, like so. Now, one thing that I did find, and it really frustrated me, was a lot of the time when you were snapping this on, it kind of goes in at this odd angle, and even when you line it up, there it goes again, it's just, the magnets don't quite seem to align the way you'd like them to. It's not the end of the world, but one of the other things I found was the magnets are pretty weak, so when you picked it up, you'll have seen it in my unboxing, the thing just kept dropping off, so you had to just be careful of that. Also included in the box, you get this material type finished case which snaps onto the back. Again, it's included with magnets, so it just fits nicely there, and it's got a really handy little kickstand. So if you're watching it from media, you can just drop it down wherever you like, and that kickstand sort of opens and closes with a really good range of motion, which again is really handy. One thing I didn't like about this case, in fact I hated using it with this case on, is the fact that it adds a bit of thickness, which I'm not too bothered about, but actually the case sticks out around the tops and the edges there by quite an uncomfortable amount, and it's almost sharp in your palm. So if you're using it with this case on, it doesn't feel right. It's constantly slicing into your hands there, and it's just an uncomfortable user experience, which is a pain. I wish it was flush with the back so it didn't have those bits stuck out, and it would have just made it so much nicer. Apart from that, the included magnetic sort of case on the back there, it's really nice. There's a little sort of clasp that you can get your fingers into so you can kick it out. And at the end of the day, that's one of those things with this. For £279, awesome build quality, beautiful looking screen, and the included accessories, it's kind of hard to argue with. At a budget, this thing is really impressive. Some other things that I really enjoyed about it was multitasking on this. So I mentioned in my unboxing, I was looking forward to finding out whether or not this would work with an external monitor, and I'm glad to say it does. So you can use a USB-C hub, or if your monitor supports USB-C out, then you can literally just plug this in and use it as a mirror display, or if you're kind of really daring, you can also use it for multitasking and have separate applications open on the monitor and separate applications on this, which is pretty cool. Like I said, it's really sleek and it's just nice and easy to hold. It's very lightweight. It kind of fits comfortably in one hand as well. Although bear in mind, my point of view is someone who's used to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, so I'm used to quite a big device. When it came to using Chrome OS, I was actually really surprised by how nice it was actually to use. I've used a lot of Android tablets in my time, and obviously I've used a lot of Apple tablets in my time as well. And I always lean across onto the iPads in terms of my tablet experience, just because that kind of handheld experience is really nice to use, and then when you want to get some work done, you can. Android, I've always found that the applications just aren't optimized and they're just a bit of a pain and finicky to kind of get working. But actually this felt very much like using, I suppose, Windows on a Android skin instead. And it was really, really nice to use. I really enjoyed the multitasking and some of the gestures on it. And having a full desktop browser was finally, you know, I know Apple claimed that you get it on the iPads, but you absolutely do not. Whereas on this, I was pretty much able to do every single thing I wanted to in terms of the Chrome browser. There were no irritating drawbacks or anything like that. Like when I use things like YouTube, for example, on the iPad, there's just so many different options that don't work, or it comes up saying you need to update your browser. Don't run into those sort of experiences on here, which is really, really handy. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this was the fact that if you want to do some things like gaming, you can do, because unlike Apple, who are kind of killing off any sort of game streaming at the moment, you can download the different game streaming apps. So you can use Google Stadia on this, and you can use GeForce Now as well, although you do need to use it through the browser. Now, my experience with GeForce Now was surprisingly good, because one of the drawbacks that I had about this device was its Wi-Fi isn't particularly great. So where on most of my other devices I'll get full Wi-Fi signal wherever I am in the house, on this one I was getting a medium strength signal, which was a bit odd, and it would often drop out and it caused things to load quite slowly. But with GeForce Now I was finding that it works probably one of the best out of all the devices I own. The only device that beat this when it came to game streaming was my Nvidia Shield TV, which does a remarkable job wherever it is in the house, and so did this. And there's some gameplay included here, so you can kind of see that with the hands on. You can connect an Xbox controller as well, or any other type of Bluetooth controller, which is, again, really handy. And it makes it a really nice little gaming device to have around the house, especially if you're into streaming and you've got a decent internet connection. Now, you can download some Android games on here as well if you want. However, that MediaTek processor is the thing that holds this device back. Now, the build quality and everything else screams something more than £279. But where it really falls down is the performance. Now, straight out of the box, this device feels sluggish, and it's not awful, but it is probably one of the worst things that I've seen out of any budget tablet, unless you go for a really low-end budget. It's not the worst thing in the world, it works nicely, and you can navigate all the system without it slowing down. However, when you start throwing any form of multitasking at it, the thing will chug. It's even transitions between the different screens as well. They're just a bit slow and sluggish, which can be a bit of a pain. And I guess part of that will be down to the refresh rate of the screen, and I'm used to the iPad Pro 120Hz, but it's definitely one of those things. It doesn't do it straight away. Things are just, they're not as snappy as I'd expect. Using things like Microsoft Office on here was really nice to do, and when you have just the one single application open, it's not too bad. But it really does start to slow down when it comes to any form of heavy load, and that includes other types of gaming. So game streaming was really good, but when I fired up some things like PUBG on here, the performance really starts to take a nosedive. The other thing as well, I spoke about media consumption, and this screen is pretty gorgeous considering the price point. But the speakers on it are absolute trash. There's no way getting around that. If you're going to use this as a media consumption device, you probably want to have something like a speaker hooked up to it or some headphones, because these are just substandard. I found myself, if I had this to hand and I had something like my phone to hand, I would always use my phone. And granted, the phone costs a hell of a lot more than this does, but the speakers on this were just so hollow and tinny. It was an awful experience. And I suppose that brings me on to it, that this is a device that comes in at an awesome budget, and it promises a lot. You get the included keyboard, you get the included case and kickstand, and it is a beautiful device itself. I just wish that it was £100 more expensive and it came with a better processor in there, because all around this thing is really, really good. It has absolutely blown me away. I am so used to using Apple now, and in terms of their iPads and tablets, just because they're smooth and they work, and I absolutely adore the way it works. But there are loads of little niggly things that when it comes to productivity, they just don't do a particularly good job. This, however, the operating system on it is amazing, and it makes me wish that Google hadn't abandoned the Pixel Slate, which got discontinued after one iteration. I wish they were continuing with this, or I wish that Lenovo would kind of go full hog and give me an 11-inch version of this that was more expensive with better internal specifications, because that would be the device that I replace my iPad with. However, as it stands, I just worry about the longevity of this device. It's great at the moment, but as past 12 to 18 months, I do worry how well this is going to hold up. but I suppose that's what they're banking on. At £279, it's an almost disposable cost. Not that any sort of electronic device should ever be disposable, but it ultimately is. And if you're somebody like a student or somebody who works on the go and doesn't want to invest massively into like a high-end laptop because you don't need it, or a high-end tablet because again, you just don't need it, this is almost the perfect device. And if I was still doing a lot of commuting on the bus or the train, I would probably pick one of these up and keep it as my main daily driver, because at home I could use a powerful desktop and invest the money into that rather than having a high-end laptop or a high-end tablet, because this does pretty much everything you could possibly need to do. Word processing, Excel, anything like that, email on the go, it is really handy for it. And it comes included with everything you're going to need. There's no need to buy additional accessories, there's no need to buy an additional keyboard, anything like that. So speaking of this keyboard, I actually really liked it. It has a decent amount of travel on the keys, so it's a good amount of feedback. But the one thing that I really disliked was, first up, this trackpad. Fortunately, you can tap on it, which is alright, but it uses a diving board mechanism, and unless you're literally pressing it on the bottom here, it doesn't click, it really struggles. It wasn't too much of an issue for me because I do tend to tap on them, but it's something to bear in mind if you're looking to buy one of these. The other thing is, the keyboard is just too small. It's nice enough to use, and I could imagine firing off a few quick emails, maybe doing a few notes or something like that. But for long-term writing, and for anyone who follows me knows that I do a lot of writing, so I like to have a nice keyboard, this thing is just a little bit too cramped for me, which can be a bit of a pain. The other thing as well to consider if you're using the keyboard is, on the go, it doesn't take up too much space, which is good. So unless you sat somewhere with a really flat surface, it can get quite fiddly, so when it's on your lap and stuff like that, this keyboard moves around a lot. It also doesn't have different angles, so although you've got your different viewing angles with the case, which is really handy, unlike Microsoft Surface Line where this snaps up, it doesn't. I wish it did because I love typing at a tilt, and there's nothing really you could put on the bottom of that. So something bearing in mind if you are going to be using this for a lot of writing. Perfect for a quick email, for taking some notes or something like that, but for longer term use, you could probably get used to it, or if you have small hands, you might be able to. But it is just that bit cramped and some of the keys just don't feel right. And when I used it quite a bit, I always found that I was just typing slightly to the left of all the keys and it was just making a mess of everything. So, you know what, if you're a writer or somebody who does a lot of typing, might not be for you. So in summary, would I recommend this device? Yeah, definitely would do. If you're looking for something that's on a budget, if you're a student, if you're just working in the field quite a lot, and you just need something that's going to do the basics, so your word processing, all of that, you know what, this is a perfect device for it. It comes included with everything in the box you could possibly need. The operating system is more than competent, and I was actually really surprised by how well Chrome OS works. Never used it before, but it drives me mad thinking now actually that everyone always focuses on Android as Google's tablets, but actually Chrome OS makes a really good tablet operating system. It switches between tablet and desktop really nicely, has things like external monitor support and a full desktop browser. I'm really taken with this. So apart from some of those drawbacks that I mentioned earlier, you know what, if you're not going to be using this for loads of media consumption and you're too bothered about those speakers, or if you're not going to be doing anything power hungry, this is such a good proposition. As I said, I just wish it was a little bit more expensive with some beefier hardware inside it. And you know what, then we would have an absolute iPad killer on our hands. So, as always, I really hope you've liked and enjoyed that video. If you have, hit the like and subscribe button because it really helps to support the channel. Gonna have some more videos related to the Lenovo Duet IdeaPad Chromebook. Again, bit of a mouthful, and mostly focused on cloud gaming and how GeForce Now works on this thing. Like I said in the video, surprised me how well it performed. There weren't too many dropouts or stutters, so be sure to hit subscribe so you can watch that video. In the meantime, stay safe, let us know your comments. Do you plan on picking one of these up? And if so, why? And we'll be back soon. Ta-ra for now.